So I want you to just imagine for a second that you are the CEO of a colossal retail giant.
Okay, like a really massive operation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We are talking Walmart, Target, or even Amazon scale.
Right, the real heavy hitters.
Exactly. You oversee this completely sprawling, you know, interconnected empire. And on one hand, you are selling this just endless, mind-boggling variety of products online to millions of concurrent users.
All shopping at the exact same time.
Right. And then on the other hand, you have thousands of physical brick-and-mortar stores scattered across dozens of different countries.
Which means dealing with local supply chain nuances.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, you're manufacturing your own proprietary in-house brands while simultaneously negotiating with, like, thousands of global suppliers for third-party goods.
It's a logistical nightmare just thinking about it.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we haven't even added the human element yet.
Oh, right, the employees.
Yeah. You employ hundreds of thousands of workers across all these different time zones, tax brackets, labor laws. And on top of that, you are processing tens of millions of microtransactions every single hour.
So the scale is just, it's almost incomprehensible.
It totally is. You manage these towering warehouses where inventory is moving at the literal speed of robotics.
Right.
So the big question is, how do you keep your human resources department in Seattle, your inventory warehouses in Ohio, your accountants in London, and your customer service teams in Manila from operating in complete siloed isolation?
And, accidentally crashing the entire global company in the process.
Exactly.
Framing it that way really exposes the fragility of a modern corporation. I mean, when you look at the sheer velocity of data moving through an entity that size, the potential for catastrophic chaos is staggering.
It seems like a miracle that anything ever gets delivered on time, honestly.
It really does.
Well, that is exactly the mystery we are solving today.
I love it.
Because the secret architecture that keeps this massive retail empire from just, collapsing under its own gravitational pull is something called an integration hub.
Right. It is essentially the invisible nervous system of global commerce.
Yeah, and understanding how that hub functions is literally the difference between a business that thrives and one that just hemorrhages money.
Absolutely.
So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are doing a custom, fully immersive exploration designed specifically for the Dr. Sampak College of Business students at Tarleton State University.
As well as any business professionals who are tuning in to drastically sharpen their operations knowledge.
Exactly. We are tackling Module 17 today, which is all about enterprise resource planning systems.
A huge topic.
It really is. And I should mention, every single insight, framework, and concept we are unpacking today is sourced directly from Richard Tedmon and Casey Wilhelm's research in Connect Master Management Information Systems.
Right. That's the 2026 edition published by McGraw.
Yes, exactly.
And this is such a critical subject because it really represents the absolute pinnacle of how a modern business functions at scale. We're moving completely past theory today and looking at the actual software architecture that dictates global economics.
Which is fascinating. But before we get into the massive scale of enterprise planning, I feel like we need to bridge a little conceptual gap.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's just quickly look at where we came from. So in Module 16, we explored project management.
Right.
And we spent a lot of time analyzing the incredible complexity of executing just one single project.
Yeah, just one.
We broke down those 4 crucial stages: the initiation phase, the planning phase, the execution phase, and the closure phase.
And even for just one isolated project, the reliance on specialized software was incredibly heavy.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, managers have to utilize all these tools just to visualize highly interdependent tasks. We talked about flowcharts and Gantt charts and Peart charts.
Right, it's a lot of mapping.
Exactly. A project manager has to meticulously map out multiple dependency relationships, calculate the critical path, and use complex leveling techniques just to maximize limited resources.
So here is where I want to push the boundaries of that framework for you.
Okay.
If managing a single, temporary project requires that much software, coordination, and mathematical leveling just to keep one schedule and budget on track, how does a CEO scale that to daily operations?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right, because you definitely cannot run the daily existence of a multinational corporation using a massive Gantt chart.
No, you absolutely cannot. The fundamental difference there lies in permanence.
Permanence. Okay, break that down.
Well, project management tools are inherently temporary. They
Yeah.
govern endeavors that have a strict start date and a strict end date.
Like building a new headquarters.
Exactly. Building a new headquarters is a project. Or designing a new software app, that's a project.
All right, there's a finish line.
But running the daily, infinite loop of a global supply chain or processing payroll every 2 weeks, indefinitely, that's totally different.
Yeah, managing perpetual inventory.
Right. That requires a completely different digital philosophy. That leap in scale necessitates moving away from project tools and adopting enterprise resource planning, or ERP.
ERP. Okay, so we are shifting from managing an event to managing an entire ecosystem.
Exactly.
Before we dive completely down this ERP rabbit hole, I want to quickly invite you, the listener, to like, subscribe, follow, and share this deep dive.
Yes, please do.
And be sure to leave us a comment down below as well. It is honestly the absolute best way to stay updated and join the ongoing conversation we are having about high-level business management.
We genuinely love seeing how you take these concepts and apply them to your own coursework or your careers.
Definitely. Those real-world applications are what make this field so incredibly dynamic.
Right.
So let's establish our foundation here. What exactly is an ERP system?
So in its most distilled form, an ERP is a comprehensive software suite that businesses use to manage both their internal and external operational environments.
Internal and external. I mean, that essentially blankets the entire known universe of a corporation's existence.
It leaves absolutely no stone unturned.
Wow.
The ERP acts as a central integration hub. Its primary driving goal is to link all the disparate members of an organization together.
Basically seamlessly connecting human processes with automated technologies.
Exactly. And the mechanism it uses to achieve this is the creation of a shared organizational database,
Okay.
which is technically referred to as a single data schema. By utilizing a single data schema, every isolated department is forced to speak the exact same digital language.
Let's stop and unpack this single data schema concept because I want to really understand the architecture here.
Sure.
Why does this specific database structure matter so much to a business professional like a CFO or a supply chain manager rather than just being a headache for the IT department?
Well, it is absolutely vital to the CFO and the manager because without it, departments naturally devolve into operational silos.
Silos.
And when departments are siloed, they duplicate data. Let's look at a seemingly simple piece of data like an employee's profile. Your human resources department might have a file on an employee named Sarah.
Right.
Meanwhile, your accounting department has a completely separate, disconnected file on Sarah to process her payroll.
Uh-huh.
So when data is duplicated and isolated across different departmental servers like that, it destroys data integrity.
Because what if something changes?
Exactly. If Sarah changes her address or her tax withholding status, she might update it with HR.
But if that doesn't manually carry over to accounting,
The company is suddenly operating on conflicting versions of reality. This fragmentation leads to terrible, disjointed decision-making.
because the right hand is literally operating on different facts than the left hand.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a recipe for constant administrative friction.
And that friction is immensely costly.
I bet.
ERP enables structured, logical, and informed choices precisely because business leaders can finally see the entire board at once in real time with zero conflicting data points.
Let's ground this in a really concrete scenario from Tedmon and Wilhelm's research.
Good idea.
So imagine you are the CEO of a highly successful mid-sized business that manufactures and sells sports equipment.
Okay, sports equipment.
Right. Your core revenue comes from baseball, football, and soccer gear. But now you see a market opportunity and you are considering a massive expansion into a completely new product line specialized dance equipment.
Oh, wow. That is a major strategic pivot.
Massive. You were talking about a completely different demographic, entirely new inventory materials, vastly different global suppliers.
Right. So to make that strategic call, the CEO cannot just look at a spreadsheet of projected sales.
No, not at all.
They need to analyze current inventory levels and warehouse capacity. They need to check the available capital budget from the accounting department to see if they can even fund the initial manufacturing run.
Exactly.
And they need to review the current labor data from HR to determine if they have the specialized staff or machine operators required to handle this new product line.
So without an ERP, gathering that multi-departmental data takes weeks of endless meetings, manual audits, and cross-referencing highly conflicting reports.
And by the time you gather all those reports, the data is already 3 weeks out of date.
Exactly the problem.
But with an ERP utilizing a single data schema, the CEO pulls up a unified dashboard and sees all of those interconnected factors simultaneously.
So the decision can be made in hours rather than months.
Right, backed by data that is accurate up to the very second.
Okay, I have to push back a little here just to really test this concept.
Go for it.
When you say single database, isn't an ERP just a giant glorified hard drive? Like, is it just a massive, incredibly expensive shared folder on a corporate network where everyone dumps their Excel spreadsheets and PDFs?
You know, that is probably the most common misconception among people outside of information systems, but it could not be further from the truth.
Okay, so it's not just a drop folder.
It is absolutely not just passive storage. The distinction lies in the actual architecture of the data schema.
The schema itself.
Right. A data schema isn't a folder. It is a highly deconstructed architectural view of a data set that includes a descriptive narrative about the data itself.
Interesting.
It essentially utilizes relational database logic.
Relational database logic. Okay, break that down for me. What does that actually mean in practice for the user?
Think about it like a really sophisticated translation engine. The ERP actively analyzes the configurations and the relationships between various data inputs.
Okay.
So if HR inputs a person as an associate with an ID of 101, and accounting inputs a record for a payroll resource with an ID of 101,
The system recognizes them.
yes, the data schema normalizes that data. It uses primary keys and foreign keys to understand that these two inputs are actually the exact same physical entity.
Wow. So it doesn't just store the information, it actively connects the dots.
Exactly. If a purchase order is generated, the schema knows to instantly trigger an inventory reduction, which then automatically updates the shipping schedule.
So it is structuring the data so that causality and correlation can be instantly analyzed across the whole organization,
That's it perfectly. It's actively translating, connecting, and enforcing rules.
not just acting as a digital filing cabinet. That makes complete sense. But if this system is doing all of that complex relational logic for every single department, from finance to manufacturing to HR, the software itself must be incomprehensibly massive.
It is. The code base is indeed massive, which is precisely why ERP systems utilize a modular approach.
A modular approach.
Right. And this modularity is the absolute key to maintaining business agility. An ERP isn't one monolithic block of code.
Okay, so what is it?
It is essentially a framework made up of individual software modules. A module is a discrete element of a computer program that is explicitly intended for a specific focused task.
So instead of one giant program, you have a dedicated module just for HR, a completely separate module for accounting, and another module for inventory management.
That is exactly the structure.
Yeah.
And the core ERP integration hub is what weaves all these individual specialized modules into that single source of organizational truth.
Let's explore the business strategy behind this. Like, why is this modular approach so crucial for someone running a company? Why not just buy the whole monolithic package all at once and be done with it?
Well, it really comes down to flexibility and capital preservation.
Okay, money.
Exactly. A business does not need to buy a rigid, massive, one-size-fits-all system on day one and pay for features they will literally never use.
That makes sense.
They can acquire specific modules that are uniquely relevant to their current operational bottlenecks.
Right.
Then, as market conditions shift or as the business organically grows, they can seamlessly add, upgrade, or even delete specific modules without tearing down the entire digital infrastructure.
So it boosts operational efficiency tremendously because it cuts down on data redundancy while perfectly tailoring the software to the company's actual size.
Spot on.
Let's apply this back to our mid-sized sports equipment business. Let's say they're just starting out. They have strong revenue, but they're still relatively lean.
Okay.
They probably don't need a massive, automated, multinational HR system yet because they only have a core team of, like, 20 employees.
Right. Managing 20 people isn't a systemic bottleneck yet.
No, not at all.
In that scenario, purchasing an enterprise-grade HR module would be a massive waste of capital.
Right.
So they start by implementing just the core ERP hub, plugging in only the accounting module and the inventory module.
Because tracking cash and tracking physical goods are their immediate priorities.
Exactly. But let's fast forward. They launch that new dance equipment line, it goes totally viral, and suddenly they need to hire 150 new employees.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They have to open a new manufacturing facility and manage complex shift schedules, benefits packages, all of it.
At that point, trying to manage 150 factory workers on a spreadsheet will bring operations to a grinding halt.
It would be a total administrative collapse. But because they instituted a modular ERP framework early on, they don't have to panic.
Right, they're prepared.
They simply purchase the HR module from their vendor and plug it right into their existing ERP hub.
And instantly, the new HR data regarding those 150 employees begins talking to the existing accounting module to automate payroll.
And it starts talking to the inventory module to track which employee is operating which machine.
I am really visualizing this like a smartphone.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Like the core ERP is the base operating system like iOS or Android. It provides the background environment, the security, the shared file system. And the modules are the specific apps you choose to download based on what you actually need today.
Right, you don't download every single app in the App Store.
Exactly. You only download the banking app, the messaging app, and the map app.
That analogy holds up perfectly under scrutiny. The operating system provides the strict environment where all the apps can securely share data. Just like your Contacts app shares a phone number with your messaging app without you having to copy and paste it, the ERP allows the HR module to share employee hours with the accounting module.
You only install the functional apps or modules that your business requires to operate.
Exactly.
This all sounds like a digital utopia. But here's where we have to look at the friction, because obviously no technology is perfect.
Definitely not.
What is the catch? If ERP systems are this magical integration hub that solves all data silos, why doesn't every single mom-and-pop shop on the corner have one?
Right.
There has to be a severe downside.
Oh, the downsides are incredibly significant, and they act as major barriers to entry.
Okay, let's hear them.
Tedmon and Wilhelm's research outlines 3 major drawbacks that historically terrified CEOs.
Terrified.
Yes. Massive initial cost, a remarkably steep learning curve, and incredibly expensive ongoing maintenance.
Okay, I really want to focus on the cost and maintenance. Why is it so prohibitively expensive?
Well, to understand the cost, you have to look at how these systems were historically deployed. For decades, ERP systems were strictly on-premise.
On-premise, meaning physically in the building.
Exactly. That meant a business had to physically buy massive, expensive servers. They had to construct climate-controlled server rooms to house them.
Oh, wow.
They had to purchase individual perpetual software licenses for every single employee's desktop computer.
That adds up fast.
And furthermore, they had to keep a massive, highly paid IT staff on payroll purely to maintain those servers, run security patches, and perform manual upgrades.
So the upfront capital expenditure, or CapEx, required to just turn the system on was staggering.
Staggering is the right word.
Let me put myself in the shoes of a mid-level manager trying to pitch this.
Okay.
If these on-premise systems require millions in upfront capital, months of employee training that literally halts productivity, and a dedicated team just to keep the servers from catching fire, how does a manager ever convince a skeptical CEO that this nightmare is actually worth the investment?
The only way you convince a board or a CEO is by obsessively focusing on the long-term return on investment, the ROI.
The ROI, right.
The argument is that the intense upfront pain and capital drain are eventually offset by the absolute elimination of manual synchronization errors. Think about the hidden costs of a disjointed business. How much are you paying administrative clerks to manually re-enter data from an inventory system into an accounting system?
Probably a lot.
Exactly. How many millions do you lose when a CEO makes a bad strategic call because it took 5 weeks to manually build a report?
So when the data is instantly visible, the velocity of decision-making increases, and the system eventually pays for itself.
Yes, that was the historical argument. However, the technology industry recognized that this massive upfront cost was totally stifling adoption.
So they changed it.
Right. The technology itself evolved to completely bypass these exact drawbacks.
How did the tech evolve to completely bypass a physical server room?
The paradigm shifted entirely toward cloud-based ERP systems, which are delivered via the SaaS model.
Okay, SaaS, software as a service.
Precisely. Instead of the business buying on-premise servers and installing software locally, the entire ERP ecosystem is hosted, stored, and maintained off-site by the software vendor on their own massive server farms.
So the business simply accesses the software via a secure internet browser.
Yes. And this fundamentally changes the mathematical equation for business decision makers who are weighing tech investments.
Because that massive upfront capital expenditure essentially disappears. You don't have to build the server room or buy the hardware or cool the room.
Exactly. You shift from CapEx to OpEx operational expenditure. You are just paying a monthly or annual subscription fee.
That shift from CapEx to OpEx is revolutionary for corporate budgeting.
It really is. Cloud-based SaaS options drastically lower the barrier to entry. They drastically reduce internal IT labor costs because the vendor's engineers handle all the maintenance, the security patches, and the version upgrades overnight.
You don't have to manage complex hardware life cycles at all.
Nope. And perhaps most crucially for the modern workforce, cloud ERPs allow for total remote access, 247 from anywhere on the globe.
Let's think about the practical reality of that remote access for a second.
Okay.
Imagine a regional manager for our sports equipment company. They are responsible for auditing 50 brick-and-mortar stores across New England.
Right.
It is 2:00 a.m. They are sitting in a hotel room in Boston, and they need to prep for a high-stakes morning meeting with a store manager who is underperforming.
Well, in the era of on-premise systems, that manager would be largely paralyzed at 2.0.
Yeah, they couldn't do anything.
They would have to wait for business hours, call the home office IT desk, and wait for someone to manually run a batch report from the local server and email it over. The decision-making is delayed by hours or days.
But with a cloud-based ERP, that same manager can literally open their tablet in the hotel bed, log into the secure portal, and pull up real-time inventory shrinkage reports.
All right, localized sales velocities, employee absenteeism rates for that specific Boston store.
Because the database is hosted on collective resources in the cloud, it is never turned off.
Never.
It is always ingesting data and is always accessible.
It completely transforms corporate agility. It allows management to be proactive rather than endlessly reactive.
Right, so we have established a really solid foundation here. We understand the integration hub, the transition to the cloud, and the logic of a relational data schema.
We covered a lot of ground there.
We did. Now, I want to systematically break down the specific modules that Richard Tedmon and Casey Wilhelm highlight in their research.
Okay, let's dive into the modules.
Let's start with what is arguably the most critical aspect of any business: the money.
Yes.
How do financial and accounting systems actually function when they are integrated into this hub?
Well, before we look at the integration itself, we have to clarify a very common point of confusion.
Okay, what is that?
We need to distinguish between financial management systems and accounting systems. In casual conversation, people use these terms completely interchangeably, but in the realm of operations, they perform vastly different functions.
I will admit, if you had asked me yesterday, I totally would have assumed they were synonyms for the exact same software.
Most people do. They're deeply intertwined, of course, but they are functionally distinct.
What's the difference?
A financial management system, or FMS, is a high-level strategic tool. It is designed to create, store, and report on macro financial transactions.
So CAMPRA.
Right. An FMS is looking at the horizon. It measures overall cash flows. It projects future liquidity. It calculates complex tax liabilities across multiple jurisdictions.
Wow, okay.
It ensures strict legal compliance with entities like the SEC, and it models different scenarios to optimize overall profitability.
So the FMS is essentially the panoramic view. It is looking at liquidity ratios, capital structure, compliance.
Exactly.
So if that is the macro, what is the accounting system software doing?
The accounting system handles the highly granular, microscopic, day-to-day calculations that keep the business breathing.
The day-to-day stuff.
Yes. We are talking about tracking accounts payable, exactly what you owe to your suppliers today, and accounts receivable, exactly what your customers owe you right now.
Right.
It handles the mechanics of billing, the processing of payroll, the generation of purchase orders, and the meticulous logging of ledger journals.
So to put it simply, the accounting system records that we paid the electricity bill today, and the FMS analyzes how paying that electricity bill impacts our cash liquidity for the next quarter.
That is a perfect summary.
Okay, so if they are this connected already, why does integrating both of these specifically into the ERP matter so much?
Integrating them into the ERP provides a rigid, automated architecture for financial compliance. But more importantly, it links your financial data directly to operational causality.
Causality, cause and effect.
Exactly. When these financial systems exist in complete isolation, A CFO might look at a report and see that the company has a sudden cash flow bottleneck.
Okay.
But the isolated system won't easily tell them why that bottleneck exists. When both the accounting and FMS modules are integrated into the wider ERP, you can track the life cycle of enterprise resources incredibly accurately.
Makes sense.
You can automatically track tangible assets, which are assets with a determined objective physical value. Things like real estate, manufacturing equipment, server racks, physical inventory.
The mechanism there seems pretty straightforward. The ERP's purchasing module knows we bought, say, 3 new heavy-duty forklifts for the warehouse.
Right.
So it instantly tells the accounting module to begin depreciating those assets over their useful life. And it tells the FMS module to adjust our overall capital expenditure projections for the year.
That is exactly the mechanism. But the ERP's true power is that it also tracks and theorizes the value of intangible assets.
Intangible assets.
Right. These are non-physical assets that don't have a barcode. We are talking about goodwill, brand equity, intellectual property, patents, and trademarks.
Wait, let's pause and really dig into this for a second.
Sure.
Because I totally understand how software tracks a forklift. It has a serial number and a purchase price. But how on earth does an algorithm track something as nebulous and invisible as brand equity or goodwill? You can't just put a barcode on customer loyalty.
No, you can't. It really requires a paradigm shift in how you view data. You are totally correct that you cannot scan a barcode for goodwill.
Right.
But an integrated ERP doesn't need a barcode. It uses relational correlation.
Okay, relational correlation.
It links customer engagement metrics and product life cycles directly to financial performance. Let's look at the mechanism here.
Okay.
Suppose your company launches a massive, expensive new marketing campaign promoting a shift towards sustainable materials.
Right, a campaign designed specifically to boost brand equity and public perception.
Exactly. Now, your CRM module, which handles customer relationships and marketing, might track a massive spike in positive social media sentiment, or increased newsletter open rates, and a surge in repeat buying from existing customers following that campaign.
Right, so good marketing metric.
Because it is an integrated ERP, it doesn't just log those as marketing wins and stop there.
What does it do?
It correlates that engagement data with a simultaneous spike in revenue logged in the accounting module and a decrease in customer acquisition costs.
Oh, wow.
By analyzing that interconnected data over time, financial managers can look at the spread between the book value of the company's tangible assets and its market value.
And then use the ERP's correlation to more accurately estimate the theorized financial value of the company's brand equity.
Exactly.
That is genuinely profound. The system is mathematically quantifying the financial impact of human emotion and customer happiness in real time.
It totally removes the best work from valuing intangibles.
That is wild.
And speaking of causality and cause and effect, let's look at a very practical operational scenario.
Okay, let's do it.
Say a business leader is reviewing their daily dashboard. They notice a sudden, severe drop in available cash flow, which is an FMS metric,
Right.
and a simultaneous alarming spike in accounts payable, which is an accounting metric.
Okay, so without an ERP, the CFO looks at that dashboard, completely panics, and immediately starts interrogating the accounting department, demanding to know why cash is disappearing.
And the accounting department would have to spend days manually digging through ledger entries just to find out.
What a nightmare.
But because this is an integrated ERP, the CFO can literally just click on that spiking accounts payable metric and dig one layer deeper.
Right.
The relational database instantly shows that the cause of the spike is a massive surge in employee overtime payouts.
Oh, and employee overtime is strictly a human resources metric.
Exactly. The ERP connected the financial symptom to the operational cause. The CFO instantly sees that the root cause isn't a failure in accounting. It is an operational staffing issue on the warehouse floor.
So instead of yelling at the accountants, the CFO can immediately collaborate with the HR director and the warehouse manager to figure out why overtime is spiraling out of control.
Right. It solves the real problem faster.
That transition is flawless, honestly, because it brings us directly to the human element of the business.
It does.
Let's unpack the integration of human resource management, or HRM modules, into the wider ERP hub.
Perfect. So human resource management is the discipline that oversees the entire complex life cycle of personnel within an organization.
Basically everything from hire to fire.
Yes, it encompasses recruitment, hiring, onboarding, continuous training, complex compensation and benefit structuring, and the establishment of corporate personnel policies.
Okay.
When you integrate an HRM module into the ERP, you are creating a single centralized source of connectivity for all personnel-related information.
Which is that centralized employee database we discussed earlier.
Exactly.
But why is this level of integration vital for managers across the entire company and not just for the HR team sitting in the corporate office?
Because it democratizes personnel data through customized, structured dashboards.
Democratizes it.
Right. A manager leading a completely different department, say a regional sales director, can log into the ERP and access a dashboard specifically tailored to their security clearance.
Okay, what can they see?
They can monitor mandatory training completion for their specific team, view the design and scheduling of upcoming performance evaluations, track employee absences in real time, and review payroll timesheets.
All in one centralized location without ever having to email the HR department.
Exactly.
Let's bring this back to the real-world operations of our sports retail business.
Okay.
Imagine a floor manager at one of our high-volume physical retail stores. They are looking at their localized sales dashboard on a Friday afternoon, and they are totally stressing out because sales volume on the floor is 30% lower this week compared to last week.
Right, that's a huge drop. If that floor manager only had access to an isolated sales database, they might draw a disastrously wrong conclusion.
Yeah, they might panic.
They might assume the new product line is a total failure or that the local marketing team completely dropped the ball. They might start aggressively marking down inventory to force sales, which destroys profit margins.
Which is terrible.
Yeah.
But because the HRM module is seamlessly integrated into their dashboard, that floor manager can layer human data over their sales data.
Yes.
They look at the dashboard and realize, wait, my lower sales volume directly correlates with a highly unusual 40% spike in employee absences, sick leaves, and tardiness tracked in the HRM module this week.
The ERP reveals the operational reality.
Right.
The problem isn't the product, and it isn't the marketing. The problem is that a severe flu bug is sweeping through the staff, the store is drastically understaffed, and there just aren't enough employees on the floor to assist customers and close sales.
So the system literally prevents a reactionary business mistake by connecting the financial outcome directly to the human data.
Exactly. It saves the company from its own blind spots.
Okay, so we have a system that pays the employees, tracks their absences, balances the ledgers, and understands our cash liquidity.
Right.
But none of that matters if we don't actually create the physical products we are trying to sell.
Very true.
I mean, if the factory floor isn't talking to the accountants, the business still fails. How does a digital dollar connect to physical steel?
That leads us right into the integration of CAD and manufacturing software.
Perfect. Tell us about CAD.
This is where the digital world materializes into the physical world. CAD stands for Computer-Aided Design, or sometimes you'll see it as CAD, Computer-Aided Design and Drafting.
Right.
It is an automated, highly precise digital process that uses software and hardware to document, simulate, and design real-world physical objects.
So we are talking about digital blueprints, but with microscopic three-dimensional precision.
Far beyond simple blueprints. CAD files contain complex metadata about material strength, stress tolerances, and geometric dimensions.
Wow.
Now, when CAD software is isolated, it is really just a drawing tool.
Okay.
But when CAD is plugged directly into an ERP system, something incredibly powerful happens. The ERP software actually decodes the digital design files.
Decodes them.
Yes. It parses the CAD data and translates it into a functional bill of materials and a set of usable manufacturing specifications for the entire physical production line.
So it transforms a static 3D drawing into a dynamic set of operational instructions.
Yes.
What does that mechanism look like for the business professionals who are actually overseeing the supply chain?
Well, it provides absolute microscopic visibility into the production process. Operations managers can track the entire progression of a physical product from raw material to finished good.
Because the ERP decoded the CAD file.
Right. The manager can monitor exactly how much raw material is being consumed in real time, how efficiently the robotic or manual machines are running, how much human labor is being deployed per unit.
And even the exact percentage of completion for a specific manufacturing batch at any given second.
Yes, all of it.
Let's visualize this mechanism in action, because This is fascinating.
Okay, let's use the sports company.
Right. Our sports company has decided to manufacture its own proprietary brand of specialized, highly durable, lightweight baseball bats.
Great example.
The industrial engineers spend months designing the exact dimensions of this bat in the CAD software.
Right, and the moment the chief engineer signs off and that design is finalized, the CAD specifications flow directly into the ERP's manufacturing module.
Seamlessly.
The ERP analyzes the geometry and the material requirements and instantly generates a bill of materials. It calculates, to manufacture a production run of 5,000 of these specific bats, we require exactly this cubic volume of specialized maple wood and this exact tonnage of aerospace-grade aluminum for the custom handles.
And because it is all integrated into the hub, a human being doesn't have to walk that report down to the warehouse.
Not at all.
The ERP automatically alerts the inventory module to check current stock levels. And if the stock is low, it automatically generates a purchase order to the global supplier for the wood and aluminum.
Yes, and simultaneously, it schedules the CNC lathe machines on the factory floor, and it alerts the HR module to schedule the specialized machine operators required for that specific shift next Tuesday.
It just completely revolutionizes the supply chain.
It really does.
I mean, there is no middle manager frantically running for the engineering department to the warehouse with a rolled-up paper blueprint saying, I think we need to order more aluminum.
Right. The system understands the physical requirements, and the system autonomously executes the logistics.
It is a stunning level of automation.
Truly.
So we have engineered the bat, we have procured the materials, we have manufactured the bat, and it is now sitting on a pallet in our inventory warehouse.
Ready to go.
Now, we have to actually sell the physical bat to a human customer and collect the cash.
A most important part.
Which brings us to the most critical touch point, integrating transaction processing systems, or TPS.
Ah, yes. Transaction processing systems are the frontline digital engines designed specifically to collect, store, modify, and retrieve data pertaining to core business transactions.
The daily lifeblood of commerce.
Exactly. Sales, online orders, vendor purchases, credit card payments, customer refunds.
And the research by Tedmon and Wilhelm explicitly notes that the explosive proliferation of global e-commerce has made TPS absolutely vital in today's business environment.
Oh, without a doubt.
You literally cannot run an online store without a robust TPS.
E-commerce would cease to exist without it. And integrating your TPS directly with your central ERP hub yields massive transformative advantages for operations managers.
To understand the impact, I feel like we have to look at how this used to be done.
Yeah, that context helps.
Because in the relatively recent past, payment processors and sales terminals delivered information to the corporate office as batch information.
Right, batch processing.
Paid a picture of what a batch processing environment actually looked like.
In a batch processing environment, a retail store would ring up hundreds of sales throughout the day on their cash registers.
Right.
But none of those sales were communicated to the central corporate database in real time.
It just sat there.
Right. At the end of the day, or sometimes even the end of the week, a massive file, the batch, was generated.
Okay.
A human data entry clerk at the corporate office would then have to take that batch of transaction data and manually key it or manually reconcile it into the company's main accounting and inventory mainframes.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare of inefficiency.
It was.
You were relying on a human being to type in thousands of digits perfectly every single night.
It was incredibly tedious and highly prone to catastrophic mistakes.
I can imagine.
Integrating the TPS into the ERP changes the paradigm to real-time processing.
Right.
It reduces human error drastically because you entirely remove the human element of manual data entry, data assignment, or data interpretation.
Which is huge.
And it also provides management with an instantaneous, streamlined approach to cash flow reporting.
Okay, I want to hypothesize on something here, just thinking about the workforce.
Sure.
If the integrated TPS is instantly handling all of this transaction data, instantly updating the ledgers, and instantly reconciling the accounts, doesn't that mean entire floors of accounting clerks and data entry staff essentially become obsolete overnight? How does this impact labor costs?
That is the harsh, profound reality of operational efficiency. Because the transaction reporting is streamlined and automated by the software, a company absolutely does not need the massive armies of dedicated accounts, receivable clerks, payroll administrators, or data entry specialists they required back in the 1990s.
Wow.
The system is doing the heavy lifting autonomously.
So the jobs change.
Right. The labor shift moves from people entering data to people analyzing the data that the system entered. It significantly reduces baseline administrative labor costs.
Let's look at the modern mechanism of a sale, just to cement this.
Okay.
A customer living in London goes onto our global e-commerce site and buys one of our newly manufactured baseball bats.
Okay. The microsecond that customer clicks Confirm Purchase, the integrated TPS processes the credit card and records the transaction.
Right.
But it doesn't stop there. Through the integration hub, it instantly updates the general ledger in the accounting module. It simultaneously registers the incoming revenue in the financial management system. It immediately deducts 1 unit from the inventory count in the warehouse module, and it autonomously alerts the fulfillment center in the UK to pack and ship the item, generating the shipping label.
And all of that complex, multi-departmental coordination happens without a single human being having to key in the data, send an email, or update an Excel spreadsheet.
Everything is automatic.
The digital consequence of the sale just cascades through every relevant department instantaneously.
That is the ultimate realization of the integration hub. The velocity of business matches the velocity of the internet.
Amazing. Okay, so we have covered the core operational pipeline: finance, HR, manufacturing, and sales.
We have.
But there are 2 final crucial pieces to this puzzle that bring the entire ecosystem full circle back to where we started.
Yes, there are.
How do project management and customer relationship management integrate into the ERP, and why is it necessary?
This is where an organization truly binds its strategic future to its daily operations.
Okay, unpack that.
We discussed project management software at the beginning, the tools used for scheduling, tracking phases, calculating critical paths, and resource leveling.
Right, the Gantt charts and peer charts we covered in Module 16.
Exactly. When you plug a specialized project management module directly into the ERP, you eliminate the boundary between temporary projects and permanent operations.
Eliminate the boundary. How so?
You get a centralized location where all project data is securely stored and easily retrieved by executives. Management can review the planning, resource allocation, and financial analysis of any ongoing project, regardless of whether it is in the initiation, development, or monitoring phase.
If it's not happening in a vacuum.
Right. It allows massive, complex projects to be broken down into manageable phases and sub-projects, and the performance, both operational and financial, can be evaluated efficiently from a single source of truth.
Because the project isn't isolated from the company's real-world budget or labor pool.
Exactly. It grounds the project in reality.
That makes a lot of sense. It anchors the temporary project to the permanent reality of the company's resources. Now, what about CRM, Customer Relationship Management?
CRM is arguably the most outward-facing system. It handles the critical, nuanced relationships with the public marketing campaigns, sales pipelines, lead generation, customer service ticketing.
Right.
A robust CRM provides deep analytics into customer satisfaction, strategies for retaining high-value customers, and models for attracting new demographics.
But Tedmon and Wilhelm's research points out a massive, very common pitfall here.
Oh, it really does.
Historically, and even today, many businesses purchase their core ERP system from one vendor, and they purchase a flashy CRM system from a completely different vendor.
They do, and it creates a massive architectural headache.
I can imagine.
If your ERP and your CRM maintain their own separate proprietary databases, you have reintroduced the exact problem the ERP was supposed to solve.
You're right.
You have to manually synchronize the CRM database with the ERP database on a regular basis, often using clunky middleware or batch exports.
Which brings us right back to the original sin of data silos.
Precisely. Manual synchronization, or even delayed API synchronization, causes gaps in data alignment.
It inevitably leads to redundant data entries, misinformed customer profiles, and agonizingly slow data access times.
Right. Fully integrating your CRM directly into your ERP's single data schema mitigates all of this.
It means the sales team and the manufacturing team actually share a single database.
Yes. This results in automatic, instantaneous updates across the company, radically faster billing cycles, and the ability to generate custom reports via dashboards that combine customer sentiment with manufacturing costs.
Let's paint a really vivid picture of why this matters so intensely for customer service and brand reputation.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say a customer calls our sports equipment company's support line. They're furious because they received one of our new baseball bats and the aluminum handle snapped on the first swing.
Yikes.
Right, it is a defective product.
Okay, well, if the systems are not integrated, the customer service representative is stepping into an absolute nightmare.
How so?
They answer the phone, and they have to log into the standalone CRM just to see who the customer is.
Right.
Then they have to put the angry customer on hold, log into a separate sales database to verify the purchase date. Then they have to call the warehouse manager on the phone to see if a replacement bat is even in stock. The process takes 20 minutes, the customer's frustration boils over, and they leave a scathing review online.
And brand equity is severely damaged.
Exactly.
Now let's look at the integrated approach. Because our CRM and ERP are fully fused into a single data schema, that customer service representative is looking at one unified screen.
Yes.
They answer the call, and based on the phone number, the CRM instantly surfaces the customer's complete purchase history.
Right away.
But it goes deeper.
Yeah.
Because the CRM talks to the manufacturing module, the rep can see the specific manufacturing batch and the specific CAD file that defective bat came from.
They can instantly identify if it was an isolated incident or a broader manufacturing defect.
Exactly. And while still on the phone, the rep can see the real-time inventory module, verify that there are 500 replacement bats sitting in the warehouse, and instantly issue a replacement order and process a partial refund through the integrated TPS module.
Wow.
A 20-minute nightmare becomes a 3-minute resolution.
And that level of frictionless, highly competent service is exactly what retains customers, generates positive word of mouth, and builds that intangible brand equity we discussed earlier.
The technology directly drives the financial valuation of the brand.
It really does.
It is honestly profound when you map the architecture out from end to end like that. The complexity is staggering, but the logic is beautiful.
I completely agree.
I mean, without an ERP, running a massive business is like trying to play a symphony in an orchestra where the brass section has sheet music written in French, the string section is reading Russian, the percussionists are blindfolded, and the conductor is just waving a flashlight in the dark.
That is guaranteed chaos. That is a phenomenal analogy, actually. The ERP provides the universal sheet music, it turns the lights on, and it ensures every single instrument is playing at the exact right tempo.
Yeah.
It allows the business to perceive its environment, process massive amounts of information, and react with agility, coordination, and financial precision.
We have covered a truly massive amount of ground today.
We sure have.
From the foundational logic of the single data schema to the critical modular approach that allows for scaling. We analyzed the financial paradigm shift from CapEx to OpEx driven by cloud computing.
Right.
And we mapped out the intricate mechanisms of how financial, HR, manufacturing, and customer service modules all fuse together to eliminate data silos.
It really drives home why deeply understanding management information systems is not just an IT requirement, but an absolute necessity for anyone stepping into a leadership role in the business world today.
I couldn't state it better. You simply cannot manage the strategic operations of a modern business if you do not understand how the digital information flows beneath the surface.
Absolutely true.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this extensive deep dive into the world of MIS. As we wrap up this session, I want to remind you one more time to like, subscribe, follow, and share this deep dive with your classmates, your study groups, or your professional colleagues.
Yes, and most importantly, head down to the comments section.
We have formulated a specific question based on today's concepts, and engaging with it is the best way to solidify your understanding of the material.
Here is today's discussion question. Think about a business you work for right now, or perhaps a business where you frequently shop.
Okay.
If that business were to fully integrate their customer relationship management system directly into a company-wide ERP, what is one specific customer service headache or one glaring data gap that you think it would instantly solve?
Apply the concepts we discussed and let us know your analysis in the comments.
I am genuinely looking forward to reading those analyses. Taking these high-level architectural concepts and applying them to real-world, everyday business friction is where the true learning happens.
Absolutely. And as for what is coming up next time, we are making a major conceptual shift.
Oh, yes, we are.
Next time, we are tackling Module 18, Time Value of Money. We will explore the mathematical and philosophical reasons why a single dollar sitting in your pocket today is fundamentally, intrinsically worth more than a dollar promised to you tomorrow, and how that singular financial concept drives the most massive corporate investment decisions on the planet.
It is a foundational concept of finance that completely changes how you view every single economic choice you make, both professionally and personally.
You definitely won't want to miss that one. But until then, keep analyzing the digital architecture around you.
Because if the systems can't talk to each other, you can't build the future.
See you next time.